So trying to bridge the gap between the product team and the e-commerce team. So for some of our customers, we're actually even integrating with their PLM systems, like for the product lifecycle management. And in case that you have such a system, that is. So you don't have to have that, but if you do, then you can get a really good sort of automatic pipeline of designing products and then going into Emfas, and then we automatically enrich them and they are ready for your e-commerce.
You're listening to Inside Commerce, a weekly e-com strategy, technology and CX focused podcast hosted by experienced digital consultants and re-platform specialist Gurd and Paul Rogers. Get insights into e-com strategy and leading brands, hear from industry thought leaders and leading tech vendors with practical advice to help you improve your online CX. This episode is sponsored by Shopify, another really interesting and highly relevant topic, which is about AI-driven product data fixes, how you can automate quality improvements and solve data challenges. And this comes up in every business that me and Paul have worked with, whether that's re-platforming or just people trying to improve how they drive product discovery in the online store. There are always product data quality issues in a business, and the sources and causes of them are myriad. And some are technology-based, some are process-based, some are skill and knowledge-based. So we've got a really interesting technology vendor co-founder on today who background is in head of data and technology for a leading e-com retailer, ASKET, who we had on the podcast last year, but has now taken his brand and retail knowledge and turned that into a really interesting product. So a warm welcome to the co-founder of Emfas, Vidar Trojenborg. How are you?
Thank you. Really nice to have you guys.
Yeah, appreciate you joining us again. Second time in the podcast. How does it feel?
Yeah, this is like a recurring thing.
Yeah. Well, you've gone from the retailer e-commerce leader to the technology supplier now, so this is going to be interesting. So before we start getting into the questions around like this concept of AI driven product fixes, let's talk about you, Emfas. So how have you got to being a co-founder of Emfas from where you were at ASKET?
Sure, yeah. So I started out working at ASKET and leading the sort of tech development over there for the past 5 years. And during my period there, like I've seen like a bunch of different technological projects. So we did a big re-platform to Centra back in the day. I've also done some work within like CMS integrations and CRM even. And then more recently, I also did a PIM project. And I think during that time, that was like similarly when LLMs and like large language model technology became widely available. And at the same time, I had my two co-founders now, Rasmus and Carl. They were building these large language model applications, but in the education tech space. So around 2023, we sort of like put our heads together and we took a look at like e-commerce and how you can actually leverage AI and large language models to improve the sort of product enrichment problems that all brands are struggling with. So yeah, we sort of put one and one together, and now we founded Emfas.
Great. And then your strapline is the AI workspace for product catalogues. And obviously you've just given us a bit of a high level intro. Can you talk us through what that means in practical terms for brands and end users?
Yeah. So one thing that we have found now that we've spoken to over 100 brands is that like every single brand and like e-commerce person is some way or another using ChatGPT or similar technology in their day-to-day. And I think this is a good indication that, I mean, the technology is here and it's solving a lot of problems, but there is no real efficient way or like systemic way of applying those types of technologies on your whole product catalog. So we are sort of bridging the gap of making the technology available, but at the scale of your whole product catalog in a really easy to use UI. And I mean, since every e-commerce brand have their product catalog, it's sort of a very common problem that all brands share and that we're solving across the industry.
And in terms of like, what are the biggest issues that you see from a catalog quality issue perspective? And like what level of impact do you see? And then, yeah, kind of how does that translate into Emfas?
Yeah, I mean, from speaking with all of these brands, and I don't think I'm alone about this, that I've seen a lot of like nightmarish experiences where you have these like really complex and big product catalogs that are managed manually, and this sort of quality is sort of falling apart, or it's like really difficult to stay consistent across your whole product catalog. And I think for many like brand-driven e-commerce brands, it's really important to be able to provide a consistent sort of story and consistent product, like data sort of experience to the customer. And since like brands are struggling a lot with this, if some products are sort of subpar to that quality, then that will be very visible in an overall like really nice looking brand. So yeah, I think data quality issues are everywhere, and for like brand heavy e-commerce stores, this is a big problem.
And I have a bit of a sub question. This kind of eats into the final question, where we'll ask you a little bit around kind of where the product's going. But I've obviously seen the product, and you've kind of shown it to our team. And at the minute, I think largely you're kind of focusing on like existing text-based attributes and like translations, that kind of stuff. With ASKET, a big part of your PDP proposition was the kind of transparency, DPA stuff. And then I guess like where do you see this going? And I don't know if hopefully you're happy to answer that, but is it a case of, you plan to move into visual content, you plan to move into some of that, more supply chain based stuff? Like how deep do you intend to go around kind of catalog data?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. So I think we've started out with, as you say, we're solving all of the immediate problems regarding like common product related data. So most of the things that you will see on a regular PDP. And currently we solve like all of the text based attributes, where they can be like categorization, product descriptions, but also a lot of SEO things like SEO meta descriptions and meta titles. And what's super obvious for us as a company is that visual content is definitely next on our roadmap. So working a lot with like imagery, product imagery, and being able to translate from image into text attributes and like features. So being able to extract that from images automatically. And this is something that we're actually rolling out in beta right now, and we have widely available for all of our customers in March. So I think that's going to be super, super exciting. But all in all, I would say that like just solving text-based content questions is really the majority of the work that most brands are pouring into this. So we started out in the big sort of problem space, but now we're moving into visual.
Now, you've obviously got a lot of experience working in retail side yourself and working across multiple teams in an on-channel environment. We've worked with lots of different businesses, whether they're pure onlines, large omni-channels, and you typically see like commonality around what the causes are for the disconnect between data that ends up on a website versus what the ultimate level of data should be in order to sell products effectively. Instead of me rambling about what I see, I'd love to hear from you. What do you think are the main causes? What have you seen, and where does this inaccuracy creep in?
Yeah, so I think this is one of the big problems within e-commerce that all brands are struggling with, and I would sort of summarize that as being it's a natural disconnect between the product team or like production team and the e-commerce team. So you have the product team who are designing products or purchasing products. And then you sort of have to have this kind of handover into the merchandising and e-commerce team. And this sort of bridge between is often very long, and there are different teams, different stakeholders, so it's difficult for them to work efficiently. And And along this sort of road, you have all of these scattered and very manual processes. So like Excel spreadsheets that need to be filled out, files that need to be gathered and uploaded into Shopify as your e-commerce platform, for example. And I think that providing the correct tools to bridge that gap is exactly what we're trying to solve here. So trying to bridge the gap between the product team and the e-commerce team. So for some of our customers, we're actually even integrating with their PLM systems, like for the product lifecycle management. And in case that you have such a system, that is. You don't have to have that, but if you do, then you can get a really good sort of automatic pipeline of designing products and then going into Emfas, and then we automatically enrich them and they are ready for your e-commerce.
What do Mattel, Victoria Beckham, Sennheiser, and Glossier all have in common? They power their businesses with Shopify. Shopify is the most innovative and scaled commerce platform on the planet. It also happens to have the best converting checkout on the planet. Shopify, powering the future of enterprise commerce. Find out more at shopify.com/enterprise.
Yeah, I always find it interesting when working with businesses to see where product data ownership sits as well. And often I find the biggest problem is that there might be 3 or 4 people who own data, different parts of the data. So you might have like the owning the SKU and the core product naming and categorization sits in one team. Then owning like all the cost and pricing and stuff sits somewhere else, and then you've got all the enrichment bit. And actually, it's amazing how not having a centralized view of it or centralized owner means that inefficiency creeps in from the start, and then it's pain in the arse to fix retrospectively across a large product set.
Yeah, one thing that I can mention just like anecdotally from speaking with a lot of customers that we have now is that most brands don't actually know there's no one person who knows the whole scope of like where the data comes from. Even the brands themselves don't know that. So what we often do when we come in to help a customer is we help them just mapping out all of the different data points, where they come from, who owns it, and where it ends up. So that's a big part of what we do as well.
Yeah, and that is hugely important because it's amazing, and this isn't a criticism of any business, because we all know when you're busy and you have so much to execute on, inefficiency is inevitable. It just happens. But over time, you get that product data debt where you aren't even aware of some of the gaps because you can't see the impact. So I think that's really nice. Well, I'm gonna end up sidetracking down a little rabbit hole here because I find this subject fascinating. But let's get back to the premise of your product is about AI automation. So it's about stripping out manual process. It's about trying to provide efficiency. But we are now, I believe we're reaching a tipping point in AI where there's so much AI, and now there is quite rightly increased scrutiny around like governance and how you use AI intelligently, effectively, and how you control it so it doesn't go off and do rogue things. So one of the key questions I've got is about brand controls, and some businesses are going to be more concerned than this than others, but what people are worried about, how do I make sure it doesn't go off and write things that are completely at odds with how I want to present my products? What safeguards are built into the product, and how can people like control and overlay these controls?
Yeah, so there are 2 main components within the Emfas platform that ensure the sort of integrity of your content quality. So the first one is basically an automatic sort of mechanism where we automatically look at your current content or previous content. So we look at your previous products and all of the content therein. And then we sort of leverage and extrapolate based on that through a framework called RAG. It's like an AI framework where it's retrieval augmented generation. So by extrapolating on that previous data, we maintain the authenticity and the tone of voice. However, like let's say that you have a bit poor quality as your input data, then of course we shouldn't sort of extrapolate on that poor data. So the second component is basically the ability for brands to provide explicit guidelines. So as a brand, you can provide these, it's guidelines basically, where you can set up rules for how you want your different content pieces to be generated. And this is something that all of our customers use a lot, and it's really, really efficient. So you simply provide rules for like the attributes level, like for the product description, for example. Let's say that you always want to mention the product material within your product description. And then by providing that guideline, the AI will automatically enforce that across your product catalog. And what's really cool is that we do it both sort of proactively for all of the new generated content, but we also do it retroactively. So we look through your previous content from the lens of the guidelines, meaning that you will find any inconsistencies that you currently have on your site with this in place.
Right. And so one of the things that I know that you've kind of built in is maybe a differentiator to some of the other things on the market are like, I guess, like some level of auditing capability. And then off the back of that, you kind of prioritize some of the actions and fixes. Can you just talk us through how that works and why you've kind of built that early on and kind of how that helps to add more value to the end user?
Yeah, so I think when we started out with Emfas, a big part of what we did is to do these kinds of audits or alert-based system where we look through your whole content with the AI. So our AI will just go through all of your products, all of your content within, and sort of surface any of these inconsistencies with the help of the guidelines that I just spoke about. And as the AI brings these inconsistencies forward for you, you can then manually just go through them one by one if you want and just adjust them accordingly. So the AI sort of gives you proactive recommendations for the changes that needs to be done, and then you can just act on them in a matter of a few clicks. So instead of having to like manually go through hundreds or even thousands of products just to make sure that they are like qualitative, the AI will sort of do the dirty work for you, and then you just sort of fill in the blanks and do the final manual work on top.
Great. And then I guess the next question, so when you're working with larger catalogs, and I think James will have the same, but there's certainly businesses I've worked with that have got massive catalogs and always use product data issues as an excuse for like, you know, not doing certain things or kind of pushing things back. But one of the things you've talked about, like a low level so far, or like you started talking about a little bit, is kind of how you can use rules as part of the automation. Can you talk us through like how you would approach maybe, you know, big business, hundreds of thousands of SKUs, and use the rules to kind of, support some of this stuff, and how you might then have like layers of governance within that?
Yeah. So this all comes down to our sort of guideline engine within the platform, where these rules can be applied on different levels of granularity, which means that you can apply rules on the sort of on a brand level if you're a multi-brand store, or you can go down into category level to do it only on like North Face jackets. But then you can even go further into product level or like specific markets even. So some of our customers, they've been able to do market specific content on different kinds of categories, just to make sure that they capture local intent, which is super, super cool. So, I mean, one of our customers, they launch about like 100 products per day, which I think is it's a really high volume, where, I mean, setting these guidelines up once will give you a really good sort of control center of ensuring that all of your content will maintain the same quality, but also maintain the tonality and follow all of the different like requirements that you might have on your product catalog. So, I mean, our platform works really well on both fashion, but I mean, even better on use cases like what's the word, like hardware or like maintenance parts, spare parts, technical products that require a lot of different information on them.
Yeah, it's funny now. I look back to when I was early days of e-commerce and I was running e-commerce stores before I became a consultant. And one of the biggest pains was there was no technology that would automate quality controls around product data to have a definition of, right, you must have X, Y, and Z for this particular product type. Otherwise, that product cannot go live because that's our quality control check. You would have to custom build and code logic in order to do that. Otherwise, anything could be put through and you could get, the classic junk in and crap quality. And it's really nice now to see that we've got greater democratization of technology, and we have tools now that allow people to be more granular in the controls at category specific levels, so that, because we all know that some categories, like you said, technical products require far deeper technical specification work, and there are fundamental attributes that you have to have in there, otherwise you can't sell those products accurately and they won't drive accurate product discovery. So that's very interesting to hear. I'm sure there's probably some people listening who will want to tap you up after to find out how they can adapt that to their catalog. So those listening who are interested, we will obviously have contact details on the landing page. One of the bits you talk about on the website with Emfas, and we talked about when we were planning this podcast, was context-aware AI. And we love terminology in e-commerce, but that you're able to detect inconsistencies in product data. And you gave me an example, but for those listening who obviously we can't see that on the screen, what is this doing? How's it doing? And what is the benefit to merchants?
Yeah, so a good example here might be just, a product consists of many different attributes. So let's say that you have a t-shirt where you have one attribute describing the material of the product, and then you have another attribute just which is the description of the t-shirt. And having a context-aware AI is really important, because if we were to generate a description, we need to ensure that the material that is mentioned in the description matches the material that comes from the material attribute. So if it's 100% cotton in the material attribute, then the AI will make sure that does it contain like 100% cotton in the actual description. And these sort of context-aware AI generations is really key to our platform, because if you were to just generate descriptions or different things with the use of AI in isolation, just generating a random description for a product, then it won't be context aware. So you need to always give it the sort of full context in order for the content to be of good quality. And I think that the benefit for merchants here is that instead of having like I've seen a lot of like really bad use cases where you have sometimes a proofreader, like someone who goes through all of the production ready like products. Like in some cases, we've even seen the CEO of the company sort of proofreading the products, which is not really good use of a CEO's time. But what this enables you as a brand is this reduces manual labor, it reduces the time to market, and it further improves your SEO, like overall visibility online, and in the end conversion rates, right? By having a good information on your products.
Yeah, excellent. And for people with multi-store, we'll get onto the international bit next, because I know that you support translation, but translation means different things to different businesses, and in some languages, automated translations don't work so well because they don't have the context of the language, and the direct translations don't always resonate. German's a great example. So can you talk us through how does Emfas handle it? What translation engines are used? How do you handle automated translations? Plus, how can businesses like control it directly themselves to bring in like human-based translations where they need to.
Yeah, precisely. So I think we are firm believers that AI is sort of improving the productivity here for e-commerce brands. So within our platform, you are able to translate into any language with just a matter of a few clicks, and this works like straight integrated with your e-commerce platform like Shopify or Centra or the likes. And the way we do it is we enforce both the sort of, as I mentioned previously, the automatic mechanism where we look at your previous content, and if you have written in German previously, then you will maintain your German tone of voice. But if you haven't, we also leverage the use of your guidelines. And what a lot of our customers do is they provide explicit sort of translation rules. So if you want to translate any specific word or paragraph in a certain way, then you can just provide that, and the AI will sort of follow that taxonomy, which is really handy if you have a certain way of writing out in different languages. But then, like also like AI is far from being sort of on par with just human intelligence. Of course, we're not delusional here. So I mean, the AI will sometimes just do 95% of the work. And as a brand, if you want to have like really, really high quality translations into another language, one option that we provide is you can generate like all of these translations automatically, and we do 95% of the work. And then as a human, you can come in and just oversee the translations within the platform. So that way you can sort of have a human in the mix, while having the AI do most of the work for you. But then again, if you're a customer that like you're satisfied with 95% accuracy, then simply working with translations fully driven by AI is definitely possible.
Great. And then my last question, so James has got one more in a second. But a lot of people listening to this, or a lot of the kind of brands listening to this, will be working with spreadsheets, or I'm sure you're familiar with Matrixify in the Shopify world. And, you know, there'll be a lot of kind of manual work around that. And, you know, there's obviously a lot of risk. You've obviously worked with, I think, Akeneo before ASKET, and you're very familiar with PIMS. Where does Emfas sit in this world? Like, I think there's probably recently, maybe I think there's potentially less demand for PIM than there was 3 years ago, as a lot of the platforms have got stronger in this area. Working with spreadsheets has got easier, and again, the platforms have made that better. But where does Emfas sit, and yeah, how does it kind of drive benefit within the platforms you work?
Yeah, I think this is really something that we work a lot with, where our platform works really, really well with your existing e-commerce stack, meaning that integrating Emfas is simply just, it's like an app in the Shopify App Store, or we just need an API key to your e-commerce platform. So there is no need for like developing or any developers at all. Actually, it's really easy to get started. And I think what we're looking at here is you have this spectrum where on one end you have the traditional PIMS, which oftentimes requires like hundreds of development hours to sort of build out and to integrate with your existing stack. And then on the other hand of the spectrum, you also have these new solutions that could be like Airtable based PIMS, or really like slim and customizable solutions, where we are sort of trying to be the solution in the middle, where we leverage all of the like good features of AI, and we integrate directly with your e-commerce platform, so you can leverage those ones instantly without requiring to implement like or integrate via a lot of consultant hours. So we're sort of bringing value directly to the table for e-commerce brands. And then again, as we're not this Airtable solution where you have to build out the product model from the ground up, we give you tools to instantly work on your product catalog within a very easy to use and good UI, which I think is really key to be able to, as a non-technical person, work with the technology of AI on your product catalog. And lastly, I would say that, like, in general, if you are if you are working with spreadsheets and you're on Shopify or Centra, then it's really a no-brainer to just at least try out, like, using Emfas, just because, like, if you're not using AI to enrich your product catalog today, you're really missing out. So we're trying to, like, embody, like, the whole work smarter, not harder mentality here, which is really working well for a lot of e-commerce brands.
Yeah, I'll be intrigued to hear, actually, what is the key feedback you're getting, because you've progressed rapidly for basically what is a startup. The product maturity is quite impressive, and you've got a lot of big brands already working with you. So I'd love to hear, what are the things how are they most using it? What are the things that they're getting the most value from? Because when I looked at the Bronisha gave me a quick demo, the bit that I really liked was the dashboarding, because a lot of times in early stage startups, you get the raw product, but you don't get that more maturity around, like, the dashboards, the alerts, and that ability to see at a glance where you've got errors in data inconsistencies, where you've got those specific parts of the catalog, be able to pinpoint and then prioritize. Because as a merchandiser, I know that category A is my killer category. I can see I've got 30 errors in there. That's where I'm going to focus. So that, to me, resonated really well. But what feedback are you getting? What are people using it the most for?
Yeah, so it's been a really fast-paced journey so far. And when we started out, we quite quickly realized that a lot of brands, in the beginning, we pitched the use case of being able to just generate a lot of copywriting on product level and translating it. But as time progressed, and as we sort of taken a look at as more and more e-commerce brands and their product catalogs within, we have been able to solve a lot of a bigger chunk of the different product enrichment processes. So basically going from just enriching the descriptions and now into being like a fully fledged, like we solve all of the attributes on your products. So one thing that you might notice here is that we are actually kind of becoming or taking over all of the workflows from the traditional PIM, which is definitely, I think, the direction that we are sort of heading towards, where we are basically replacing a lot of the traditional workflows that were previously just inputted in these big forms, essentially, which are the traditional PIMs. And we are now replacing that with the use of AI, sort of making you 10x more efficient as an e-commerce person, without having to pay these super hefty fees of traditional PIMs. So I think the future of e-commerce will look very different in the coming 5 years with the use of AI. And alongside with the rollout of visual data within the Emfas platform, we will sort of become the best of breed product enrichment platform for both like text-based attributes and visual.
So it's a bold aim, and I like it. I mean, you need to be bold, but I think the key point about this, the reason for doing this episode, is that me and both Paul and myself have seen the fact that the industry change, as Paul alluded to earlier, that fewer and fewer businesses are looking at PIMs if they don't already have a legacy one in place. And I go back 3 years, and I had a lot more projects where PIM was a fundamental discussion point in the tech stack as part of a replatforming. I've not seen that in the last couple of years come up once. Whereas, as you've mentioned, Vidar, Airtable has come up, and there are some really smart people like Ollie Rose who are doing a wonderful job building out a consultancy around Airtable, and it suits certain businesses and it solves certain problems very, very well. But it doesn't fit in every business model. And it's interesting to see like a modern tool that is tackling the product data quality issues. And I like the fact that the future is going to be around visual as well as like the written product catalog data as well. Interesting. So if anybody wants to find out more or wants to challenge you on any of this or wants you to put your money where your mouth is and show them the products and you can actually see it, how do they reach out, Vidar?
I think best way is simply to go to our website, emfas.ai, and sign up for a demo or just contact us directly there. Otherwise, feel free to contact via LinkedIn. That's also very much welcome, and happy to answer any questions.
Fantastic, Vidar. Always love chatting to you. Looking forward to seeing the story develop, and I hope everyone listening has found it interesting. We like to bring you new tech stories where we think they're really interesting to the e-com industry. So do reach out to Vidar if you want to probe him any more, or feel free to reach out to me and Paul if you want to discuss anything around the product data challenge. Thanks for listening as always.
Thanks. Bye.
You're listening to the Inside Commerce podcast hosted by experienced consultants James Gurd and Paul Rogers. Inside Commerce is your fast track to digital knowledge, featuring interviews with leading e-commerce retailers, industry thought leaders, and the C-suite of key tech companies to explore the latest in digital strategy, customer experience, and tech. Discover what the latest trends really mean and get practical advice based on experience to help fine-tune your e-com strategy and tech stack. Follow us on LinkedIn and reach out to James or Paul if you'd like to discuss an e-commerce project. We hope you enjoy the latest episode.